Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm continuing my year-end 2020 series with the biggest fails of 2020. So aside from 2020 itself, which was a complete dumpster fire of a year, today we'll just focus on makeup that disappointed me this year. And I actually have a pretty big list of things in front of me, a lot of which I never got the chance to talk about here on my channel. I guess when I'm coming up with video ideas, I always think about things that I'm really excited about and passionate about, and I don't always think to talk about the negative stuff, but I do think there is a place for it because it's helpful for you guys to know what worked out for me and what didn't, especially if you have the same preferences as I do. And that brings me to my next point, which I think kind of goes without saying, but I always get comments when I do these videos that, people are upset if I didn't like something and they liked it, but that's kind of the beauty of makeup. We all have different preferences, we have different skin types, so please don't take it to heart if I didn't like something that you do. Actually, I'd love if you'd comment down below and let us know why you like the product, because it could be that you have a completely different skin type. So that'll help to just give people who are reading the comments a different perspective. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And we're gonna go back in time to January of 2020. I had, I think, 6 different products that month that really didn't work out for me so well. So the first one was the Maybelline Cheek Heat Liquid Blushes. And this kind of kicked off the liquid blush trend for 2020. I was so excited to see an option at the drugstore. Little did I know that there were many more to come that were going to be a lot better than this one, but I was just super disappointed. These were very sheer. Now, I know they claimed to be sheer, so that wasn't anything new, but I was thinking that maybe they would be able to be built up on your cheeks, and sadly, these were so sticky and so tacky, and they just didn't dry down all the way. So when I tried to add a different layer and add a little bit more color, it didn't work out. It kind of made a big mess of everything, and it took off my foundation underneath. So I was kind of left with just this sticky, muddy mess on my cheeks. Now, if you're somebody who really likes a sheer blush, I think these probably would have worked out fine. But for me, I like to see a little bit more color. So building them up was really the only way to do that. So that's why they ended up not working out. But I was able to find some great drugstore cream blush options from Milani and e.l.f. later on in the year, so it was okay that these weren't the greatest. Next up, from the Ulta brand, they had launched their Effortless Effect foundation, and I don't normally buy from Ulta's house brand. I've tried some products that I think are really great, other ones are kind of a miss, so it's a very hit and miss brand for me, but this foundation looked really good because it was supposed to be very hydrating. It had all these wonderful claims about smoothing your skin, but this probably would win the award for the worst looking foundation I have ever tried on my skin. It just highlighted dry patches I didn't even know were there. It sank into fine lines and pores. It was absolutely awful. I think I did a video where I showed what this looked like on my skin in natural lighting. If I can find that video, I will link it down below, but it was really, really bad. And judging from, I think, the 2-star review that it has on Ulta's site right now, I think a lot of people felt the same way, so definitely one to avoid there. Next up, we had the Fenty Snap Shadow eyeshadow palettes, and I thought these looked so cute initially, and thinking about all the travel that I had coming up this year, which I didn't end up taking, I think a lot of us didn't, but I was thinking how cute that would be to have like these 6-pan little palettes that snap together, and you can make your own kind of custom 12-pan eyeshadow palette. And I had never tried Fenty's eyeshadows before, so I was really looking forward to these. And when I got them home, I was disappointed in the quality, and maybe it's because drugstore and affordable brands like BH Cosmetics and ColourPop have gotten so good that I was just expecting more out of it, but I just felt like the shimmer shades were really hard to pick up. I kind of had to really dig to get them out, and then the matte shades just kind of were patchy for me when I tried to blend them out. So that was definitely a pretty big disappointment. I know these had very mixed reviews. Some people said what I say, and then other people felt like they loved them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on them down below, but for me, they were pretty much a miss. Next up, we had the Milani Screen Queen Foundation. And I was excited about this one. When I first put it on the back of my hand, just testing it out when I first got it, I was very excited because it felt like a really creamy, really hydrating formula. And when I first put it on, it did look very skin-like and really natural, but it doesn't have a lot of coverage to it. So there's a few areas of my face where I need more coverage, like around my nose, especially where it tends to get red. And the rest of my face, I don't care. It can be a really light coverage. It could be tinted moisturizer, but usually I need a little extra. So I need a foundation that's light, but that can build upon itself. And this one just does not build up very easily. It took off the layer that was already there when I tried to add another one. And kind of like those Maybelline Cheek Heat blushes, it was doing the same thing. So I think it could be because it's such a hydrating formula that it wasn't drying down all the way, so that when you try to layer something on top, it just doesn't stick, you know? So that was a big disappointment for me as well, because I did like the feel of it and everything, and I like lighter coverage foundations these days, but I definitely need to be able to build them up in certain areas on my face. And in addition to that, even adding a concealer didn't help, because again, that sticky layer underneath, my concealer wasn't even sticking to it. So unfortunately, we'll add that to the list of Milani foundations that don't work for me for some reason. I think their concealer is amazing, but for some reason, the foundations just don't work out. Next up, we also have the Physicians Formula Dewy Blush Elixir. So very similar to the Maybelline Cheek Heats. These also stayed super sticky, tacky, very greasy on my skin. So I wasn't able to build these up either. And even if I could, I just don't like that feeling of my cheeks feeling sticky when I touch my face throughout the day, or my hair would kind of get stuck in it. So not a fan of those either, but I know a ton of people love them. They got so many rave reviews on YouTube. So if you love them, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below as well. And then the last product in January that didn't work out for me were the L'Oreal Matte Lip Crayons. And these were probably the driest lip crayon I've ever tried in my life. They were almost hard to get on my lips in the first place. It wasn't just that they kind of dried out throughout the day or they made my lips feel dry. They were hard to even draw on. It was almost like a crayon that I had left the cap off of for too long and the formula dried out. It was like that. And I think at the time, the other reviews I was seeing also said the exact same thing. So I know I wasn't alone with this one. So definitely, if you're looking for a lip crayon at the drugstore, I would check out the Maybelline Superstay ones. Those were a lot more comfortable to wear and very easy to apply. But these for me were a complete disaster. All right, so then moving on to February, I only have one product that didn't really work out for me, and that was the Bite Beauty Changemaker Foundation. So I had gotten the foundation and primer. I thought the primer was actually okay. It wasn't my favorite primer in the world, but it wasn't bad enough to include in this video. But the foundation was a total flop for me. When I first tried it on, it actually looked really good. It again had that nice skin-like finish, but as the day wore on, I felt like it sank into my fine lines and somehow was starting to make my skin look more dry throughout the day, even though it didn't look like that initially. So it almost seemed like something in the formula was like evaporating out of it, like all of those hydrating ingredients. And as the day wore on, my skin just got drier, more texture started to show up, more fine lines kind of started to peek through, and it also wore away like in some areas and not in others. So I just really wasn't happy with that one as a whole. And again, it was more on the expensive side. And honestly, I have drugstore foundations that I like a lot better than that one. So definitely one to skip, I think, if you have drier skin. Next, we had in March the Huda Beauty Pastel Obsessions palette. So I normally really enjoy her Obsessions palettes. I think they're very good for the most part. I think the formula is really nice, and I usually love the color stories. And I was very excited actually about the pastel ones. I thought they would be beautiful for springtime. Unfortunately though, I thought that the formula of these was very lackluster, and I've seen this with a lot of pastel palettes, so I don't know if it's how they formulate pastel eyeshadows, that they're just incredibly sheer. They hardly showed up on my eyes at all. And it wasn't only the matte shade shades that I felt like I really needed to build up. The shimmer shades also, I just had a hard time picking up. A lot of them had more of that topper type of feel where they're not super pigmented. It just looks like a little bit of sparkle on your lids, and that's about it. So these just weren't my cup of tea. I know I did mention that back in the review, and a lot of people had said that they really enjoyed them. So again, it just comes down to personal preference, but these were probably my least favorite out of all of the Obsessions palettes that she's come out with. Next up, also back in March, was the Benefit Cheek Stars palette. And I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of reactions from you guys with this one saying, what do you mean? This palette is awesome. It has great reviews actually, but having worked at Sephora back in the early 2000s, I was around when the original Georgia and the original Dallas blush and original Sugar Bomb were out. And I loved those back then. I thought they were great, and they've since been reformulated. So I think that's where a lot of my disappointment comes from. If you had never tried the original ones, then you might be totally fine with this palette, but I was expecting the same kind of shades that they were, particularly by Dallas, because the old one had kind of a reddish tone to it. It was super pretty. It was like a pinky brown, and now it really just doesn't look that much different from the Hoola bronzer that's in the palette as well. And Georgia used to be kind of more of a satiny peach powder, and now it has shimmer in it, which I wasn't a big fan of either. And the Sugar Bomb in this palette hardly shows up on me. I have to keep like piling it on and piling it on. And it also has a very strong fragrance to it. I know all of Benefit's box of powders do, but I just wanted to mention that in case you are sensitive to fragrance, that you're probably not going to be okay with that. I am. I don't really mind fragrance in my makeup that much. So for me, that didn't really factor into my review. It was more of being disappointed with the way that they reformulated the classic colors that they put in this palette. But that being said though, this was actually my first time trying their cookie highlighter, and wow, that is a beautiful highlight. I definitely think that that's awesome, but not worth $60 for the whole palette just for the one highlight. I would probably just buy that one on its own. Next up in May, Fenty had released their cream blushes and bronzers. I know a lot of people complained about the size of the blushes. They felt like they were more like an eyeshadow, and they really were teeny tiny, but the size isn't even why I'm putting them in today's video. It was more formula related. I just thought that they went on a little bit patchy for a cream product, and I don't know if any of you guys had the same experience, but for me it happened again when I was trying to build up the color. They definitely go on a little bit more sheer, and when it came to the bronzer and I put it on my face, I would try to add a little bit more, and I noticed it again trying to take off my foundation underneath, or just looking a little bit patchy or splotchy on my skin. The color wasn't even. And around the same time, I'd actually purchased the Tarte cream bronzer that had come out, and I didn't have any issues with that one at all. I actually really loved that one. It was really just the Fenty formula, and same thing goes with the blush. Now these don't stay particularly sticky on my skin, but they still reacted in the same way as the stickier ones that I tried earlier in the year. So for me, I just didn't feel like these were worth the money, again, especially because at this point in the year, there were already some really good drugstore options coming out anyway. Also in May, I had to mention the Tarte Confessions of a Maneater palette. So this was definitely one of the biggest, most ridiculous things that happened this year in the makeup world, because when I saw the picture of this on Ulta's website, I was like, wow, this is a beautiful palette. It looked cool toned, it looked gorgeous. And I got it home, I'm opening it up, I'm doing my Sunday haul video, and I'm like, what? I mean, you can actually like see that video when I opened this for the first time, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was basically the exact same warm tone shades that are in countless other Tarte palettes. It was very similar actually to their original Maneater palette, which I had. And in that video, I did a comparison between the two, plus a couple of other Tarte palettes, and they were literally almost the same. So this was a huge disappointment for me, and I couldn't believe that the pictures were so misleading on the Ulta website. I was just blown away by that. They weren't even a little bit different, it was completely different. So that one was a big shock for sure. Next up in June, I had tried out the new Makeup Revolution XX Revolution brand. I did a whole video on it, and overwhelmingly, I actually liked the line. I thought most of the products were really, really good. The only things that I wasn't crazy about were the two foundations. They had one that was supposed to be more of like a glowy foundation and one that was more matte. Both of them looked incredibly heavy on my skin, very mask-like, and just had that really makeup-y look. And I'm just somebody who doesn't like that much coverage, and I wasn't expecting it to be quite so much. So if you are somebody who likes more coverage, then you'll probably love it. But for me, just having drier skin and more mature skin, usually the higher coverage things just tend to accentuate fine lines and pores and all that stuff. And these definitely did that for me. So that's why those two made it onto my list. Next up, in July, I actually spent a ton of money on this, on the new Face Trinity. And this is something I'd been wanting for a long time. The reason that I wanted it is because one of my eyebrows actually is always lifted higher than the other. And I had seen videos on kind of evening out your face by using it. So I was going to use it on my eyebrow that sits lower and just try to add some lift, because that eyebrow is making this eye look more hooded and more down than this one. So I just got it to try to kind of even out my facial features a little bit. I had watched tons of videos on it and a lot of people had good success. And when I first started using it, I actually did see almost an immediate difference and an immediate lifting on this side of my face. But the downside was that I noticed I started getting heart palpitations, and I didn't really make a connection with it yet, but you are using like an electrical current in your skin, and potentially it could, I guess, go into your body. And as it turns out, I believe that it was disrupting my heart's rhythm. I went to the doctor, she did an EKG, and my heart rhythm was like all over the place. She said it's not right. So she had sent me to a cardiologist. I had this whole workup done on my heart. And as it turns out, after about a week or so, it just went away. So when I went back to him, he said, your heart's actually fine. They did an EKG at the time and it was perfectly normal. So it was something that was short-lived and temporary, and it hasn't happened again since I stopped using it. And come to find out, when I did a bunch of research on YouTube, there's a lot of other people who had had the exact same thing happen to them. So that made me want to stop using it right away. I know there are plenty of people who use it successfully and nothing happens, but I happen to be, I guess, maybe just more sensitive to it, and it ended up being a very scary ordeal. So yeah, just for health reasons, I decided I am not going to use that anymore, and it's honestly not worth correcting the asymmetry in my face if it's going to bother my heart. So there's that one. Next, also in July, I had tried the new CoverGirl lid paints, and these are like little cream eyeshadows in tubes. And initially, I really liked the way they looked. I thought they were easy to apply, but as the day wore on, they started to kind of disintegrate and break up and look patchy, and I just didn't find them to be super long lasting. So I definitely prefer some of the eyeshadow sticks that I have if I'm gonna go with a cream eyeshadow versus those in the little tubes. So sadly, those didn't work out, and I was kind of bummed because a lot of the colors were really pretty and they were really affordable as well. Next up in September, we had Rare Beauty's launch, and to be honest with you, I was pretty disappointed in most of the things that I tried from Rare Beauty. I thought that the cream blushes were probably my favorite out of all of them, and also the tinted lipsticks, those were really nice too. But other than that, I thought the concealer was just okay. It wasn't my favorite, and by far the biggest fail for me was the foundation. Again, kind of like all of the ones I've talked about in this video so far, it was just way too dry on my drier skin. It just accentuated all the texture and all the dry patches. So that one just, it didn't look good on me, unfortunately, no matter what primer I tried it with. So even though I had seen really good reviews for it, I kind of felt like I was in the minority with that one. It just didn't work out. And then in October, I had tried the NYX Ultimate Utopia palette, and when I saw this in store at Ulta, it was like the first time I had been to an Ulta since everything had started back in March, and I saw it in person and liked it so much better than originally seeing it on the website. So I brought it home to test it out, and it was just so sheer and so powdery, and I was really disappointed with both the color payoff and also how it applied to my eyes. I felt like it just blended away to nothing, and the shimmer shades were very hit and miss. Some of them were nice and some of them were hard to pick up or just kind of chunky and glittery. So it just wasn't my thing. And then last but not least is something that actually happened this month, and it's the new Wet n Wild palettes. They had come out with new 10-pan palettes and also some new 5-pans that I thought looked very similar to the Natasha Denona ones and the e.l.f. ones. So very, very exciting. I haven't been this excited about a Wet n Wild launch in a really long time. Unfortunately, though, I started testing them out here at home. I swatched them and most of them swatched okay, but when I went to put them on my eyes is where the trouble started. The lighter matte colors blend away to almost nothing. The darker ones are incredibly patchy. Some of the shimmer shades are okay. Some of them are harder to pick up or they got hard pan. I was so disappointed. I was really looking forward to another affordable option when it came to eyeshadow palettes at the drugstore, but I much prefer Wet n Wild's original formula. These reminded me of the newer Milani palettes with that same kind of really super powdery formula that has tons of kick up and just blends away on your eyes. Even over primer, they really didn't work out so well. So I was super bummed about these. I was all ready to do a review here on my channel, and because I have such a limited amount of time to film videos during the week now that we're homeschooling, I just felt like I'm not going to waste my time making a video on those. I'm just going to include it in today's video and let you know. But Risa Does Makeup here on YouTube actually did a wonderful video on these, and she is a professional makeup artist. She knows what she's doing, and she tried out a bunch of them and it all kind of worked out the same way. So if you're interested in seeing a good review on those palettes, I'll link that down below and you can go and check that out on her channel as well. But anyway, guys, that's it. Those were my biggest fails of 2020. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. And if you did, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. And I'd also love to hear from you down in the comments below as always, and what your thoughts are on any of these products, or if there was something you tried in 2020 that didn't work out for you. I'd love to hear that in the comments below as well. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks guys, and I'll see you all in my next one. Take care. Bye.